Hello, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, and Happy New Year to those of you who are celebrating the Gregorian calendar. It has been the fourth day of 2023, and it has been a while. So, as we start the year of 20, just a second, I hear my echo, just a second. Yeah, I think it should be okay now. So, as we start the year 2023, we would like to reflect on what happened in the year 2022. So, that's why we called our today's topic a recap of Africa 2022. I am here joined by our analyst, his family, Kwame Gonza of Connect Africa. Welcome, Kwame, again.
Thank you so much, Mahlet. Thank you for having me. Happy New Year to everyone who's watching us today. And we didn't get a chance to say to everyone Merry Christmas, but we hope that everyone has passed through the holidays merrily. And once again, Happy New Year to everyone. We thank God and whatever you believe in who has, enabled you to go through the old year and start the new year. So we pray that you may get more blessings and be able to accomplish all those things which you hope to accomplish and which you desire. So I thank you, Mallet, also for having me. Once again, it's a new year. And as always, we are back uh, as always, concerned about the continent. We cannot stop talking about our continent and looking at it from a Pan African perspective, of course, how we want things to be, because we want to see the continent improved. We want to see the continent occupy the position it is supposed to occupy on the international stage, or what PLO Lumumba calls our continent should be able to punch, you know, uh, uh, within its weight, because currently it is punching below its weight. So once again, Mallet, I want to thank you for having me and for inviting me today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kwame, for those words. Nice introduction of the year. Uh, again, I would like to remind. I don't do this that much, but I really want to make it a habit this year. So, if you're not a family of this channel, please subscribe. If you like what we are doing, if you like what we are bringing, meaning how we look at issues that are happening in the continent, or anything related to Africa globally, then please be a family and share the link to your friends. That's what I'm going to ask. As I said before, as we stand on the beginning of 2023, we would like, of course, to highlight and reflect on some of the major events that shaped our continent politically. Because without the past, there's no present, and without present, there's no future. And everything that's happening and that's going to happen is actually intertwisted. It's interrelated. It's all about we just have to look back the history, and we can connect dots. If you have been a family, or somehow if you have been following at our work at Connect Africa, you may have noticed that when events are about to happen, we give sometimes like the expectation, and as it happens we analyze it, and then the result, and most of the time it's all related. One event drives the next one. So it's important really to look at it that way. There have been a number of events in Africa that we will highlight, but we will highlight today on the major ones, because some of them really falls under the other, as they are connected. 2022 has been the year of many uncertainties, and I would say I think we have seen some great optimism, if I may say, but of course with some cautions. Let's highlight, some of the positive things first. For example, the 2 years old conflict that was happening in the northern part of Ethiopia has just been ended with a peace deal that's signed in South Africa. It was not just any other peace deal. It was a peace deal that promoted African solution to African problems. So that's, I think, a great achievement and not easily found. It has been, a heavy fought. Our leaders, we can say that have fought for that, as many Western actors wanted to take part or to be part of it. And the other major event, again, a positive, is somehow African leaders have shown a united voice against an attack on African country. I can take two examples. For example, the appointment of the International Human Rights Committee, the experts in Ethiopia. I think the abbreviation is ICHREE, which was, of course, at past the bill has passed and the mandate has been, how do you say, amended or prolonged to stay for 1 more year, renewed. That's the word, renewed for 1 more year. But we have seen all African countries who have seen, the wrong of it, have rejected it, and only one African country was an absentee. So that's kind of quite an achievement. Another victory that we can say is, of course, the vote of the African countries again regarding the HR 7311, where we saw some of the Southern African countries, or even most of the African countries, have rejected it, or gave their absenteeism was shown in that vote. So, and there are some good elections, of course, and bad elections. In a way, I say it bad, leaders that are not Pan-African somehow, who are working with the Western, have been elected, and we have seen some good elections as well. And another event is, of course, much earlier in 2022, was the Western African revolution, like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Guinea, where they have elected their own leader. I use the word elect. It's my own choice, but of course the other word is it's a coup d'etat, as the world calls it. So that's a complete rejection of the France colonization, continued colonization in the Western Africa. Another event that we can take as a positive is DRC joining the Eastern African community. There are various events, of course, some resistance to the neocolonialism, and in some cases, a total rejection of it. Another bold move by African leaders is, we have seen this, the HR 731111, the Ukraine-Russia war and its impact on Africa. Now, let me just, there are many events, but just let me go quickly to Kwame. Brother Kwame, I really want your view on this. The above events have, surely impacted or shaped the African continent. And let me just take one event, for example, what happened in West Africa, in Mali, and Guinea and Burkina Faso. How do you think that has shaped the politics in the continent, regionally, both ECOWAS and at large Africa herself or itself?
Thank you, Mahlet. You've really outlined the events of 2022 and how they happened. I want to thank all our viewers who have joined us this evening in this discussion. We would like to reiterate our stand as Pan-Africanists that we are not the mainstream media whereby we are here to sugarcoat things. We really analyze things and we bring it out to you from a truly Pan-African perspective, and just like how an African would want to hear it. We are not people who are going to come here and sugarcoat things for you, but rather as true Africans. And there is a lot of things which shaped, a lot of events which shaped 2022. One of those being the African Union, of course, the African Union ordinary session, 35th session of the African Union Summit, which happened in March. I would like to touch a few of them, and through that speech, there's one speech actually which stood out for me during that session, the 35th ordinary session of African Union Summit. The speech which was given by Prime Minister Abiy of Ethiopia, it was very instrumental. I think people need to go out there and watch that speech. It was very Pan-African in its nature, and it attempted to mobilize the continent for the good of us all. And it is important that we pay attention to such speeches. We had a lot of coups, as Mahlet mentioned it. We had a lot of coups in the West African region. We have continued to see this. And this is not just schools, actually, but it is resistance of the people to colonialism. Even recently, there was another attempted coup in the Gambia. So it is an attempt by the African people to take back power from colonialism and neo-colonialism, which has been, which has attempted also to consolidate its position on the African continent. We have seen those events in Mali. We have seen in Burkina Faso. We have seen in Guinea, like I mentioned, Guinea Conakry. So also we had an attempted coup in Guinea-Bissau, which did not go through. And recently, which I mentioned, we had another attempted coup in the Gambia. So all these point to the resistance against France. As you all know, people have been mentioning that France is colonizing 14 countries across, this region, this West African region. And it is the same region where African countries have been resisting. So I believe that this resistance, which has come with this period, would continue even to shape 2023, which we have entered as the new year. Of course, there was attempt by the other heads of state to demonize these coups and even put sanctions on countries like Mali and Guinea. But they have managed, Mali and Guinea and Burkina Faso together, but they have managed, these countries have managed to stay on course and hold their ground to make sure that the right thing is done, so that they continue to stand by the people. Because if you really analyze it very well, you could see that these are, these are coups which are have their origin within the demands for the people for security, demand for socio-economic development within these various countries where the coups happened. And for us to not to pay attention to these demands and the requirements that the people are asking for, these demands which people have, I think it would be unfortunate for organizations like ECOWAS and African Union to just come and put coups, I mean, to just come and put sanctions on them because a coup has happened. This becomes unfortunate. I think that AU and ECOWAS, together with the other regional bodies like East African Community, SADC, they need to, all of them, understand the conditions on the ground, come and analyze the conditions on the ground. What are these coups about? Instead of them ganging up with the neo-colonialists like France and the United States, who have loaded it on the African people for the last 600 years. So this doesn't really go very well with us as African people. So I believe that those coups which happened, they may continue from what I see, and those governments will continue to hold it strong as long as the goods, the socio-economic development is not achieved, and as long as the the African continent is not unified into a single state. These problems are bound to continue to come up. So when you asked about how those coups have shaped the West African region, this is what I see, even to the extent that we see that President Akufo-Addo mentioned it at the U.S. Africa Summit, which happened just a couple of weeks ago. And I think this is the misreading of the situation when you look at what President Akufo-Addo was doing. Of course, all of them, plus the African Union and ECOWAS, have misread the situation, that they are not attending to the root cause of the problem. And countries like Burkina Faso have been complaining about the insecurity. And we instead need to come together and help Burkina Faso to stabilize their country, to stamp out insecurity in the country. And if we have not done that and they find their own solution, then we don't have a right as a people to come and put sanctions on them and then demonize them and even report them to neo-colonialists. I believe that we instead have to come into dialogue as Africans and implement that African solutions to African problems instead of involving external actors on the continent. So this is what I see, about the coups in West Africa and how they have shaped the region.
Thank you, Kwame, for that. Indeed, we have done, just to remind our audience, a video as it happens about Burkina Faso, Mali. We have invited people from there and analyzed the situation back then. But of course, as the year ends, it's important, and as time passes, how that shaped the continent. Now, fast forward, I am going to go to the major events that happened at the end of the year, which is the US Africa Summit. I know that we have, analyzed this from right, left, top, bottom. Like we have made, I think, 6 parts of it, pre-summit, as it happens, and after. But still, I would like to take your view in terms of when this summit was organized. We have put our own expectation, and why this is, what is the motive, the background for the US to call this summit. In this summit, some have proven, some leaders have proven, of African leaders, as they are consistent in their principle, still they have been able to mend their relation with the US. I'm talking about particularly Ethiopia. Some have used the opportunity also to meet international organizations who are financing, so to have a fund and to get a loan. Some have also signed. This is from the African perspective. From the US perspective, they have signed a huge trade deal with Zambia and Ghana to get their resource for their electric car industry, as Kwame last time explained for us, the fourth industrialization revolution. So now, if we take, if we compare the expectation and then the results, for example, the huge motive for the US was, we have done this again. I'm going to put a link about this video. For the US was, as you, have said it before, it's because its economy is in crisis now. It's moving to this car industrialization, which is mainly now made by China. So to go to that race or to be in that competition, it needs its resource. So that's why they wanted this summit. So as we predicted, that's exactly what happened. But from the Africa side, there was no a clear agenda except that was given by the US itself. And this is, I think, exactly what Her Excellency Chombori was saying in her interview with Al Jazeera. There was no agenda set by the African leaders. Now, can we say that, if we, which one really benefited the most out of this summit if we look back at it? What's your view on this?
Thank you very much, Mahlet. I think on the AU summit as a major event, I will actually hold it together with the HR 7311, the bill which is in the Senate, which passed to the Congress, the House of Congress in the United States. It passed the United States Congress and is in the Senate, whereby they're working on that. That bill, just to remind people, is about they claim countering Russia's malign activities in Africa. What that means is that the United States has given itself, it has abrogated itself the right to interfere in how Africa conducts its affairs. It has, it apportioned itself the right to dictate and interfere in the relationships that Africa has with other countries like Russia, China, Turkey, and all the others on the continent. So while the U.S. Africa Summit was going on, this bill is in the Senate, and it is unfortunate that the same person that was hosting and organized this U.S. Africa Summit, who was, Secretary of State Blinken, while he was busy organizing this summit, the U.S. Africa Summit, which was organized definitely by United States Department of State, which is like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the United States. The same person has been given the responsibility, and the same person is working on the bill, which is the HR 7311. And that bill, which I believe that we need to campaign strongly against, because it is a bill that interferes in the affairs of the African continent and how it conducts itself, the foreign affairs. Secondly, on top of the HR 7311, we have AFRICOM, the so-called United States AFRICOM, which is the United States military, which they call the African Command. There is nothing African about it. It's just the United States military is intensifying its efforts across surrounding the whole African continent. If you go to Djibouti, where it has a very, very big, an extremely big military base, biggest military base, which is a very huge threat, to the whole, Horn of Africa region and the whole Northern Africa. And this is where actually the military jets which bombed Libya came from. And where the drones that have been used against Somalia, even in Somalia, have been coming from. This is the base where they use those. And we have seen AFRICOM also on the other side in Cape Verde. We have seen it in Kenya. We have seen AFRICOM in Tanzania at the coast. So Africa is surrounded by the United States military. For those who are paying close attention, at the same time, they are making bills, which I consider very arrogant bills. The bill 73 HR, the HR 7311, I think is an arrogant bill. Is extremely dangerous for someone who is claiming that he's resetting his relationship with Africa, because the theme was resetting relations. The United States was claiming that it's resetting relations, its relationship with the African continent. And there was an emphasis on partnership and uh, and respecting what Africans want, and the United States not setting an agenda for us. But at the same time, this is the behavior of the United States. It has continued with the same arrogance. So if it is not anything, I would say that this is hypocrisy. This is a stabbing in the back. While the African leaders are at the summit, they are being stabbed in the back, and they need to be, aware of this. And all Africans need to be very much aware of what the United States is doing in the dark, because these things are being done in the dark. They are not discussed at the summit, at the U.S. Africa summit. You did not hear about the United States and how it has surrounded the whole African continent, how it has decided to come to Zambia because of copper and lithium which is in Zimbabwe. And thank God Zimbabwe actually has decided to ban the export of its lithium in raw form, and has decided to make lithium batteries. I don't know how true that source of information is, but if this is what the government in Zimbabwe has decided to do, I think it is a very good gesture, and it needs to be consistent and stick to it until industries and factories are established, and technology is brought to establish those factories to make the lithium batteries in Zimbabwe, because this is what the African people want to see. And so what we see is that there is uncoordination, even though there was a lot of victories at this summit, but there is also uncoordination, and these uncoordinated efforts by the African heads of state, I think they are going to become very dangerous and unfortunate. I understand and remember that the person who normally talks about coordination on the continent is President Museveni. Has been talking about it in the past, that he claimed that the reason why Africa was colonized is because the chiefs, were praising themselves. They were uncoordinated. The Europeans came to the coasts, and they spent even 150 years before getting inside Africa. But the African chiefs and kings did not come together to defend the continent. And we are seeing this repeated even today, even by the same person, President Museveni himself of Uganda. We see his moves at the summit also. They are he's doing actually the same thing which he was accusing the chiefs, who did these things in the 17th century, in the 16th, 17th, and the 18th century. So I think to some extent this becomes unfortunate. So these uncoordinated efforts whereby leaders go off the script of the African Union, and they start chasing their own agendas. It opens room for divide and rule and divide and conquer of the continent, and this is very unfortunate. So this is where the United States, sees the gaps, and continues to win, sees the ways of exploiting us, exploiting these differences, and then continues to win. Imagine right now the differences now and the cracks which developed between Ghana and Burkina Faso. So it is very quick to jump in and exploit those differences, because those differences have been created by the leaders, by the African leaders themselves. So to some extent, you would not blame them if they come and exploit those differences. So the United States, I think from this, if we don't stand, even though we may have an upper hand that the continent belongs to us, but if we don't stand together, if we continue to move in an uncoordinated manner, if we don't, we continue not to move with one voice, then we open the doors for exploitation of our resources. We open the doors for them to win. We open the doors for them to be victorious against us. And that would be actually very unfortunate. And we need to move together as Africans and be able to protect the continent. So we got some victories, like countries like Uganda. They were able to secure investments in their refinery, which they are trying to build. They are also building oil pipeline, the East African, oil pipeline. Ethiopia was also able to secure investments, I think, worth more than $600 million. Uganda more than 4.5 billion. Then a corridor which is going to be built between Benin and Niger, a corridor which they claim that is what Biden and the group and the Secretary of State claim that it's going to cost around $500 million. But let us also remember that Africa's infrastructure deficit, the annual infrastructure deficit is around $200 billion. And, this is every year what we are missing as infrastructure, the money that is required for us to construct infrastructure on the African continent. And we don't have that money, is around $200 billion. And if you look at the commitments of the United States, which is $55 billion in 3 years, this becomes unfortunate. Yet countries like Ukraine, in 1 year, they get 65 billion, $100 billion. Or, if you put together how much money has been poured into Ukraine, not to rebuild, but to destroy, actually, the country, it becomes unfortunate that Ukraine has received more than $120 billion within 1 year. So this becomes unfortunate. So this is where analysts and Pan-Africanists like, our sister Hamila Haragawi said that the United States is not really serious about its relationship with Africa. And we have seen this in the past, actually, also, that during the Obama, regime, that commitments were made of up to $46 billion. But when you follow up, we see that those commitments were not met. The United States was not able to follow up. And those investments, actually, to be, candid, the investments were not made, the $46 billion which they claimed that they pledged at the US Africa Summit under the Obama regime in 2015. So I think that the United States is playing games, is playing the same way. And as Africans, I think our only remedy, especially the African civil society, for us, is to organize ourselves and make ourselves into a resounding, forceful, force, a very powerful force, to be able to command attention from the African heads of state and African Union, so that we can have an agenda as Africans. And I believe that those African heads of state who are attentive will pay close attention to us and our needs, because history has shown that this is common behavior for the United States, since it is also facing a lot of problems at home, a lot of the industrialization, infrastructure collapse, homelessness. We have had people have been dying in winter, this winter which is happening. Infrastructure is collapsing. So the United States already has a lot of problems, even though it is pretending that it is going to, to help the African continent. So this is what I see, Mahlet.
Thank you, Kwame. Really, thank you very much. You have also covered in answering the expectation versus the reality or the result, what happened during the summit, together with what was happening on the sideline, or rather hidden, the HR 731111. I would like to inform our audience also. I know that you have done, I think, in terms of what is HR 731111, as for many people, it's kind of abstract, except that it's a bill related to Russia. So some don't even know how it is related with Africa. So I think I will put a link, or as we speak, Kwame, you might put also the link on the chat, the video that you did on your channel, Africa Reimagined, so that will help people to understand it. Next, I would like to move, another summit that slipped out without being analyzed or being given the focus that is needed for it to be given, meaning that I'm talking about the Japan Africa Summit that happened in August 2022, which actually Japan pledged 30 billion US dollar in 3 years' time. Now, can you please, walk us through briefly what this summit was about and for what this money was pledged, and who is actually the beneficiary? At the end of the day, is it Japan, or is it really a genuine mutual respect between the two, meaning the African leaders and Japan?
Yeah, thank you. Once again, absolutely. The summit happened. It is called the TICAD, or the Japan Africa, a Tokyo International Conference on African Development. That is what the Japanese have called it, or which is supposed to be Japan Africa Summit. For them, they call it the Tokyo Investment. No, Tokyo International Conference on African Development, TICAD, Tokyo International Conference on African Development. A couple of heads of state attended to it. A majority of them sent their emissaries, ministers of foreign affairs and ambassadors. Of course, they don't give it as much importance as the U.S. Africa Summit, because of the United States as the superpower, as we know. But a couple of heads of state attended it, and as you rightly said, it happened in Tunisia, in Tunis, and Japan was able to also pledge another $30 billion. It also said that it will dispense $30 billion in 3 years. And for those Africans who have seen some development projects which Japan has put up in Africa, it is good, but definitely, of this money is said or is pledged, we know what this money is for. The money is for either loans, which are going to be paid back by the Africans. We, the Africans, we are the ones who pay back that money, the African citizens. And at the end of the day, we know that Japan is also targeting resources on the African continent. Japan, as you all know, it has a lot of electronics. It survives on electronics companies. Japan doesn't thrive on agriculture, but rather it thrives on industrialization. And companies like Toyota, Nissan, Mitsubishi, all these big companies are thriving. Honda, on resources, majority, of course, which are coming from Africa. And because Toyota is also moving to the phase of electrification, all automobile systems across the globe are moving towards electrification. They are no more going to use internal combustion engines. So everyone is running to Africa. The only difference is that Japan doesn't have a big military that it will come and surround Africa. That is why you see that where the United States goes, normally Japan follows, and Japan also is part of NATO. So because Japan in the past has also been a colonial country, which went and colonized China and colonized other countries where they where they had to chase it. They had to fight it and chase it. So that is why it decided to gang up with the colonial group. So that is why it moves with the United States and Britain and all these countries. So it doesn't have Japan doesn't have military strength to come and dominate. So that is why it moves with NATO. So where NATO goes, whether it is in Iraq, Afghanistan, you will see Japan also contributes troops. You see countries like Australia also contribute troops, Canada, because these are European colonial people that they take things by force. So Japan decided to join them in that way. So it also wants to find its way of securing these resources for its industry, so that its automobile, industry can continue, and it can also continue to grow in that manner. So this was the purpose of this Tokyo International Conference on African Development, as they call it, or the Japan Africa Summit. Yeah, so that is all I can say about it.
Thank you, Kwame. Indeed, for that, that of course explains why everybody is running to Africa to get a resource for their electric car industry. I wonder when Africa says. No, we need to, we would like to set up the manufacture here, and of also their country gets a benefit of from its own resource, from their own resource. As you said or mentioned, if Zimbabwe has indeed taken that direction, that would be really an exemplar one. Now, we have raised so far what happened in 2022, but of course, as we begin the year, I think it's also important to shed light on what is going to happen in this year. So in terms of that, for example, there is, the projects or the Africa that they never show you on the mainstream, or the projects or the news that they don't talk about in the mainstream, like the nearly completed Dangote oil refinery. There are so many projects in Ethiopia. So many things have been achieved despite the ongoing war that, of course, has been ended with a peace deal. The Ugandan oil refinery initiative, and also Shell's involvement in stealing Nigerian oil. I just raise them all together so that you can quickly go through them, because these are the things that we don't hear from the mainstream media. And what should we expect in this year related to these projects in the continent?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mahlet. Yes, there's a couple of other things which happened on the continent, but because our viewers, we don't want to, to fatigue them. But there's many things which happened during there, and it is a very good event that Mr. Dangote is about to finish his refinery, which he started, the refinery, which is going to produce more than half a million barrels of oil every day. It is going to produce up to 650,000 barrels of oil every day, refined oil. So, which is a very, very a huge milestone that Nigeria is going to attempt, because these refined fuels, these refined products are going to be able to meet Nigeria's needs. Not only Nigeria, but even they will be able to export to the West African region. So attached to Nigeria is that the government was able to discover an oil pipeline, a bypass oil pipeline actually, which is attached to an oil terminal that was built by Shell and is operated by Shell. But as you know, when Europeans are caught stealing, from Africa, they don't want to put that on the news, on the mainstream news, and so that event was swept under the rug. You could only hear it in the Nigerian media houses only. So, but Shell has been stealing Nigeria's oil. They have been pumping actually oil and taking it without paying for it in Nigeria. In addition to the very bad contracts which were signed with the country, that they almost impoverish the whole country. That's why we see ever since oil was started being pumped from Nigeria, we don't see development in the regions where the oil is coming from, like the Niger Delta. So this is the behavior that these countries of Europe and the United States engage in. This is the behavior which they engage in, that such a major event that should have been spoken about all over the globe on the international scale was never mentioned. But that is the behavior that Shell has been engaged in. That terminal where the oil pipeline was discovered was very well done. It has been pumping oil in 2 ships, and they have been shipping it off without paying for it, without metering it for the last more than 10 years. This has been going on. So that becomes a very unfortunate situation. So we hope that Dangote's refinery, which he's finishing, which they say the refinery is more than 97% right now complete, will be able to commence the production this year, and it will be able to relieve Nigeria from the fuel shortages which it has been facing. Nigeria already has around 4 refineries, but all those refineries have been crippled by interests, of course, by greedy people within the country that have been people who have been benefiting from the importation of the oil, refined oil products. These elements decided to cripple, the government projects, so that they would import these products, and people will continue to suffer, and while they themselves grow rich and involved are, of course, huge corporations which have control over the Nigerian energy sector. So, and some individuals, of course, in government, some cartel, some businessmen are involved within that. So, but we want to say congratulations to Mr. Aliko Dangote for this milestone, not only for the for our brothers, for our region in Nigeria, but the whole African continent would like to celebrate this refinery. In Ghana also, they are constructing a refinery, I think, which is going to produce more than 60,000 barrels of oil. A second refinery is going to be Ghana's second refinery. That refinery is being constructed by Sencho. The company is called Sencho, is from China. It will be the second refinery in addition to the first refinery which Ghana has. The first refinery was constructed in 1960 by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Actually, it was constructed even before Ghana discovered oil, because Nkrumah envisioned that within this region is likely that Ghana would have oil. So he constructed the oil refinery in 1960, and it has not been very efficient. It has also been sabotaged by some elements, of course, who are interested in controlling the energy sector in the country, and it has not been working to maximum to its optimum capacity. So we want to congratulate Ghana also in that aspect, that it is building a second oil refinery, which is being built by Essential, a group of companies, which is a Chinese company. On the other side also, we have, like you rightly mentioned, Uganda is building its, it has, it signed the final investment decision for the for East Oil Pipeline, which is going to run from the western part of the country. They refined, I mean, the oil pipeline itself. They said it will attract investments within the country of up to $4 billion from the western part of the country up to Tanga. It will run up to more than 1,400 kilometers from the western part of Uganda, which is eastern Congo, up to all the way to Tanga in Tanzania. So it will unlock a lot of investment this year, since procurement already has started. Total and Sinok have already started bringing in equipment, and so that is going on. And on the other side, also they are talking about a refinery which will cost up to $4.5 billion. Investments which were Museveni is trying to unlock in the United States, even though events, his behavior surrounding that, securing these investments is in some way disturbing when it comes to the spirit of Pan-Africanism. The behavior around securing those investments becomes disturbing. But congratulations to them on that side. Yeah. So regarding those investments, I think that is all I can say for now, unless there's any other which we have to talk about. I think Zambia also secured some $150 million for some factory. I think $150 million is really chicken. Is chicken, is change. It's just pocket change, which Anyway, congratulations to Zambia also. But it's just for pocket change. $150 million investment in copper, continued investment in copper. We know that Glencore has been to Zambia continuously continued to exploit, and Zambia has not been benefiting that much. But we pray that the African leaders are able to come together. But $150 million, I don't think President Hichilema needs to go to the United States for $150 million. I believe this is money which he can raise if he goes across the African continent from investors, African investors, to be able to invest in the sector, whether it is in the copper or if they have any lithium and stuff like that. But Zambia is majorly known for its copper, which has been exploited for the last decade, for the last many decades. Yeah. So this is what we are seeing through the year. When we talk about the investments that are going to shape the continent this year. Thank you very much, Mahlet.
Thank you, Kwame. Just on that, maybe what you might have forgotten is to mention the EU resolution on this. I think on the Uganda refinery related to that. If you can just give us.
Yeah. During this year, the European Union came out to pass a resolution claiming, of course, that the Uganda oil, the East African oil pipeline. It passed a resolution on the East African oil pipeline claiming that it's going to destroy the environment. But I would like to remind people that it is this East African pipeline that is going to create a lot of jobs and unlock a lot of investments in the country. But in the past, also, the Europeans have been very jealous of Africa's industrialization, as we have mentioned. They don't want us to industrialize, and they want to maintain our resources. They don't want us to grow economically. They want to maintain our resources as their raw materials. So we find this hypocritical, looking at the fact that the European Union itself has a lot of oil pipelines crisscrossing its country. Africa is not even up to a quarter of the oil pipelines crisscrossing the European continent, even though Europe, is many times, tens of times of, bigger than, Africa is tens of times bigger than Europe. Is much smaller. All of Western Europe, if you take it, you can put it in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and you still have space. So Europe is much smaller, yet we don't have even a quarter of the pipelines which are crossing their country. It is them actually who have destroyed the environment. When you look at the pollution in Africa, Africa has contributed only about 3% to pollution. Europe and the United States, they have contributed more than 30% of the pollution in the world. So we think that this is misplaced resolutions. And on top of that, Europe doesn't have a right to pass resolutions on behalf of Africa. Africa has the Pan-African Parliament. So if anything, any resolution that is supposed to affect and work in Africa should go through the Pan-African Parliament, but it cannot be passed by the European Union. We think that that is a void resolution, is a misplaced, is racist, is neo-colonial, and that is why the countries in the region, countries like Uganda and the Uganda Parliament and the people who matter in Tanzania, in the region, rejected this, and they call it arrogant, they call it racist, and they called it even neo-colonial. So they rejected this resolution, and I think that we need to treat it in the same way as Africans, that we cannot allow Europeans to continue to interfere in how Africa is conducting its affairs. It is a violation of our sovereignty as a people, as Africans. So that is all I could say about this. And even when you see Seven, when he went to the United States, it was not brought up by the United States because the United States, on one side, it has its interests in the region, and it cannot afford to antagonize African development. And stand in the way of Africa's development of its resources and infrastructure. But this is just the Europeans being arrogant in their normal way, a neo-colonial mentality, which is very unfortunate, of course.
Indeed, yeah, rightly said, Kwame. I will just read some of the comments, given here in the comment section, in the chat section related to this. Barrington Brown said they're all playing us for their advantage. Nigeria, South Africa, and Algeria have the industrial infrastructure to manufacture military weapons. The AU must form a military alliance to defend the continent from invasion. Yes, this is what the great Kwame Nkrumah has been saying, and Africa must unite. And under that umbrella, he said, one currency, one central bank, one government, political unity of the continent and African citizenship, and of course, as you suggested, one defense system for the continent. Until that is ensured, it will be really hard for us to defend ourselves. Easy D said, what is so crazy is when you hear that Nigeria import chickens from Europe, which is not only foolish but also nutty, he said. This is his word. Barrington again gave a suggestion. He's adding on what you suggested, to then form a continent-wide mineral cartel. This we can use to regulate the price for minerals worldwide. We then invite other countries to join the African mineral cartel. I endeavor being in the African Parliament. I hope that's a continuation. So maybe if you want to add on this, but somebody also suggested or asked in terms of, I think this is when we were talking about the projected election in terms of what's happening, what to expect in the year 2023. Elections also in 2023, what are the European interests that we must observe and unmask? two things, this one, and then maybe on those suggestions given by Barrington Brown in terms of having a defense system. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you to Barrington. Definitely, uh, uh, it is a good thing for us to have a unified and a defense system. And of course, as Africans, if we come together, we can defend the continent. We don't need really anyone to come on the continent and tell us that they are providing security for us. As we have seen in the past, that after killing President Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, the Europeans came together and they claimed that the Sahel needs security, and yet they are the ones who brought the insecurity in the region. They brought the insecurity from the Middle East after destroying the whole of the Middle East, disorganizing the Middle East and creating rebel groups there and chaos. Then they came to Libya, destroyed, and then these groups started entering from the Middle East into Africa, into Libya, and all the way to the Sahel. And now we see that those groups in Burkina Faso, destabilizing the whole region. And this is the chance they took to say they want to give us security. So if we have a unified security system as a continent, we can take care of our own security. We don't need to wait for these people to claim that they are coming to give us security. As we have seen that this claim of giving us security actually has brought more insecurity on the African continent. We saw that Mali, the government in Mali blatantly said, and it did not only say, but it proved that France has been sponsoring, rebels instead of fighting the rebels, which it said it came to fight. And this has been proved actually even further that France had, through its company called Lafarge, which manufactures cement, was sued by some Americans because they claimed that France was sponsoring rebels in Libya, Libya, terrorists in Libya. I mean, not Libya, but in Syria. The French company called Lafarge was sued by some Americans for sponsoring rebels, and these rebels and terrorists, they went ahead to attack these Americans. So this proves to you that the claims and what Mali is saying, it is true that France has been sponsoring these rebels in the Sahel. Instead of fighting against them, it has been using them to exploit the resources of the region. So you find that these people, the British, the German, all of them who have been in Mali, even some of them without our knowledge, have been instead exploiting our resources. And this is what has been going on. So when you hear conflicts in these regions, and these guys are there in Gabon, they are there in the Democratic Republic of Congo, they are there in Mozambique, you just know that they are there because they want to exploit our resources and use this as an excuse. And so that is what we are seeing. So this is the new form of colonialism, that they come with deception. So Africa, if we are unified, security wise, then we can be able to dismiss these people and demand that they withdraw from our continent. But this cannot happen. This cannot happen if we as Africans, we do not unify politically. This is the first prerequisite for us to have a strong military, for us to have a strong economic base, for us to have a strong industrial base. We have to first unify politically. And this is what we have, all of us, to work on. This is what we have to push, all of us as African civil society, before our leaders, that this project of uniting Africa politically cannot wait anymore. The more we wait, then the more the external forces manipulate the differences within us. And the more the African heads of state do not attend to these, requirements, this project of unifying Africa politically, is the more the exploitation and the bamboozling and lying by these external forces will continue, and the more these problems will persist, because they will continue to manipulate these differences, and their purpose, of course, for them is resources, and the only way out is for us as African civil society to band together and put a lot of pressure on the African heads of state and tell them that this project of unifying Africa politically cannot wait. And we want the continent to be run on Pan-African ideals, like the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said at the 35th ordinary session summit of the African Union in 2022 in March, during his speech, that we need to run the continent on Pan-African ideals. And so I believe that that issue of security is the only way we can attend to it, unifying it, unifying our militaries. We need to unify politically first. Unifying industrially, we cannot do that if we don't unify politically. Unifying economically, we cannot achieve success economically if we don't unify politically first, and reinforce all these things which we have all agreed to. What is the other thing which he mentioned? He mentioned something else. You have muted yourself, Mallet. He mentioned something else.
He
I wanted
to
to attend
create
to that.
to create a mineral cartel in the continent that we can
Yes,
use to
yes.
regulate the
Yes,
price.
so all that is supposed to be under the unified, foreign policy. Because if you have a political union, then you will have a unified foreign policy. So that unified foreign policy is supposed to take care of that. You have a unified industrial policy, and then you have a unified economic policy. Okay, so then definitely you will create a mineral commission for the continent, and these people who want to exploit you, they will not get a chance. Yeah, and I remember he also spoke about Europe's expectations. What are its goals, and Europe also, what it wants to achieve on the African continent is still materials. It wants materials, and it wants markets for its manufactured goods. You have seen that the industry which Europe and the United States have been depending on mostly, they are the high value industries. Industries for, like, for example, the manufacture of aircraft like Airbus, the manufacture of vehicles like Mercedes Benz, Renault, which come from France, Mercedes Benz, Rolls Royce, Range Rovers, all these vehicles which are coming from Europe. So they are facing a lot of challenge now that China is taking over the manufacturing of vehicles. And so they are facing a lot of competition in China because they have been depending on the Chinese market. So they would like to take over the African market, because Africa has also been growing. Its middle class, Africa's middle class has been, growing. Some people have been claiming that it is more than 300 million people of middle class, even though this is questionable. Some others, they say the real African middle class is around 60 million people, but still 60 million people is reasonable. That Europe would want to pay attention to it, and then the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, they would like to pay attention to that, to take advantage of that. Volkswagen, all these are German and French and British, and these companies, they would like to secure not only the markets for their products and high value manufactured products like Airbus, aircraft, but they would also like to secure the materials, like we mentioned, that we are now talking about lithium and cobalt, from the Congo, lithium from Zimbabwe and all other African countries, and then copper. All these are the major, resources that are going to drive the new, automobile industry. So this is what the Europeans are looking at. And the other thing which we did not mention is the importance of the when we were mentioning the industries which are important, the achievements which Africa has had in the past years, and which are going to be instrumental, the industries which are going to be instrumental in 2023, was the Ethiopia Grand Renaissance Dam.
Mhm.
It which has entered the fourth. I think it is at the next phase of refilling, and actually it started even delivering the energy to Kenya. The energy, the electricity has started being delivered to Kenya, which is very very important. So we believe that the Ethiopia Grand Renaissance Dam, which is actually the biggest dam in Africa, and some people have claimed is it the seventh biggest in the world. So it's going to start operating at full capacity within this year, after refilling it at the phase where it is. So that is a major, major, major project, which we did not even mention when we were talking about the refinery
Yeah.
in West Africa by Dangote, when we are talking about the East African oil pipeline, and the refinery that is being built also by Sencho in Ghana. So these are some of the major projects in Africa. Thank you very much, Mallet.
Thank you, indeed, Kwame. I think we have tried to cover some of the major events that kind of shaped or impacted, Africa's architecture, political architecture in the year 2022. Thank you very much for our audience who have been here, who have been, contributed ideas and asked questions. Thank you, really. We would like to see your continued engagement as we, bring you more discussions, and to look at things, as we say again and again, to look at from the Pan-African perspective. uh, unless there's some closing words from you, Kwame, that's it for me. I just want to remind our audience, tomorrow at the same time, 8 p.m. Central European Time, or 10 p.m. Eastern African Time, we will be here for our weekly Thursday to discuss the new scramble for DRC's mineral in the continent, and there are some moves. We have really analyzed what's happening in DRC, but again, there are new developments that are happening there. So we would like to give it a Pan-African view, so that people are aware what's happening. Yeah, Kwame, I'll give you a minute or 2 minutes to say closing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone who has been watching us. We need to pray for each other. We need to energize each other. We need to support this channel. We need to support Connect Africa, because as you have seen, it is very very few networks which are really discussing uh, things from a serious Pan-African perspective, and not only discussing them but also engaging in making an effort in improving our continent. Connect Africa, we are working with the PLO Lumumba Foundation in pushing petitions, and those petitions definitely are about unifying Africa. Number one, we are pushing for a political union on the African continent. We are pushing for a single passport on the African continent, and we are pushing for a single military on the African continent. So those three petitions have been signed already by the PLO Lumumba Foundation in support of them, and we are working on them. So that is why we are saying that you need to come out and support Connect Africa, subscribe to the channel, and support the work. That is the only way you can support us for now. If you can contribute and you want to contribute, reach out to us in the comment section. just write, and reach out to us that you would like to talk to us, and we will reach out to you. Personally, we'll give you the contact where to reach out to us. But I think Mahlet also, you should put that contact. You should put the email in the section so that people can reach out whenever they want to write to us. So I want to thank you very much, and I would like to say Happy New Year once again to all our audience at Connect Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kwame, and thank you all for being here. Yeah, we will meet again. Some great events happening. We are energized also in the year 2023. We will bring you. We will continue, to look at things from the Pan African perspectives because that's what we need. That's all for us. Thank you very much. Tomorrow, again, at the same time, under the topic, the new scramble for DRC's mineral on Friday, we bring you, an exclusive only on Eritrea. It's current following the peace deal in Ethiopia. So some great events are ahead. So just stay tuned and share the word, share the link with your friends. Yeah. Bye bye and have a good evening and Happy New Year again.